This is interesting. There's a whole bunch of Square Enix stuff to talk about too. This comes to us from Pirate Nation, who said, according to NateTheHate, the rumored Final Fantasy IX remake may be canceled. Which, for those of you who aren't familiar with my thoughts on Final Fantasy IX, I was lukewarm. Like, to me, it was an above average Final Fantasy game, but I didn't fall in love with it like so many other people did. I did beat the game back in the day, but I feel like I rushed through it and didn't really enjoy the experience. I was just trying to play it to get through it. And my expectations for it were not met because it was coming off of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. And this was a return back to like the old school vibe Final Fantasies, which I really liked a lot. But I guess my mind did not match what the game was. So I didn't give it a fair shot. And I really do want to try to play it again at some point in the future because people really swear by this one being a great one. And that being said, NateTheHate says some more pics of the leaked Form VV figure. And this comes from apparently NateTheHate, who said, as of last check, it remains in development to my knowledge, but I need to do a fresh check and see what a more current status is, as I did hear a month or so ago that it was in trouble and possibly canceled. I only had one source on the cancellation possibility and need to verify the info further. And this comes to us from Insider Gaming, who said Final Fantasy IX Remake's development is in trouble. It's claimed. According to a known leaker, the development of Final Fantasy IX Remake is reportedly in trouble, with him also hearing rumors about a possible cancellation. Spotted on Gaming Leaks and Rumors, NateTheHate was recently asked for an update on Final Fantasy IX, the remake status on Reset Era. The leaker revealed that he last checked, the remake was still in development. However, he needs to do a fresh check to make sure that it is still on the to learn more about the current status. Nate also added a month ago, he did hear that Final Fantasy IX was in trouble, possibly canceled. However, he did only have one source claim of cancellation possibility, and they will have to investigate further to confirm. Regardless, the fact that Final Fantasy IX Remake is in trouble will not go down well with fans. And again, like I said, with my own personal, I'm like, I'm struggling to get back to Final Fantasy VII Part 2 because it's just a lot. And I feel like Square dragged the game out way too much instead of just putting it together in one or two games. They're just like, oh, let's break Final Fantasy VII up into a bunch of different games. And people will just a free money glitch unlock forever because people love Final Fantasy VII. I am one of the biggest Final Fantasy VII fans on the planet, and I'm struggling to get through Rebirth. I want to be able to play a game in a sitting and get to the ultimate ending of that game. Call me crazy, but that's kind of how I was raised playing games. And I think a lot of people's concerns are with Final Fantasy IX, with what they're doing with it, is if it turns into a Final Fantasy VII situation, then what are they going to do with the game? How long is it going to be? And is it even worth doing at that point? They're also remaking Final Fantasy Tactics, and they're also potentially exploring other games in their back catalog to potentially remake. There are rumors about Chrono Trigger being explored, supposedly. But at this point, after Expedition 33, I feel like Square looks at that like we need to reevaluate our entire company and what we're doing. But what's destroying them right now is how they continue at every turn to seemingly choose the woke path for games, or to censor games, or to make the body type A and B instead of male, female in games. And the Square ethics department is, I believe, one of the main root causes for ruining the creativity of the company, because they got a bunch of angry Karens in charge that are pushing their own agenda instead of the company that used to be able to be creative. Even the developers themselves are just like, what is even happening here? But anyways, Players have been hearing about the Final Fantasy IX Remake for a long time now. However, rumors started heating up when a dedicated website was launched for Final Fantasy IX to celebrate 25th anniversary. Moreover, Square Enix also recently teased the game on social media, posting a quote from the ending sequence of Final Fantasy IX. Additionally, considering how the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy has performed, a new remake makes a lot of sense. In other news, the producer has teased ports of Final Fantasy 16 for the Switch 2, and Final Fantasy 16 appears to be selling poorly on Xbox. And here's what I'll leave you guys with on this one. Because Square Enix is not doing so hot. They haven't been doing hot for many years now. We're talking about multiple years. Square Enix's European branch reports worsening financial losses compared to the previous year. And the previous year were worse than the year before that, and so on and so on. Square Enix European branch reports worsening financial losses compared to previous year. European branch of Final Fantasy developer Square Enix saw worsening financial losses in the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2025. Headquartered in London, Square Enix, blah, 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 blah. So Square is hurting right now, guys. And then you see Sandfall Studios making Expedition 33 with 33 developers and a team that doesn't have many more people than that working on it and creating one of the most amazing games ever. And then you look at a massive company like Square Enix and you're like, what happened to you guys? Where's your talent? Why can't you do it? But yeah, that's really the ultimate nail in the coffin for Square. They're not the Square Enix we used to know and love back in the day. And if they really did start developing a remake for Final Fantasy IX, and it's been in the works for as many years as it has been, and it was quietly potentially canceled alongside every other game that we're hearing about right now being canceled, it's got to make you wonder, does the game industry bigwigs see a massive storm on the horizon and they're batting down the hatches right now, boarding up the windows, preparing for a massive struggle? It makes you wonder. Fans in the house, what's up, Will? For the P125, the lobbyist power will vanish if we get on the same page and make noise. They've got to obey the law. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Gamergate forever. I mean, it's very true, by the way. And I said this the other day when we were talking about it. It's like, they have no power. They're just lobbyists crying and complaining. And the biggest problem that I have with it is the straw man arguments and making up the fake narrative of what Stop Killing Games was about to try to knock it down. It's like, but that's not what it is. So it's very important for people to have their voices heard. And I think with this new era of YouTube and influencers out there are a voice for the people that was never there before. Like Moist Critical, PewDiePie. These are massive people out there with their voice on it. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. And yes, these game companies should be very afraid with this. But good to see you, Will. Hope all is well with the family. Secret final boss for the 2. That guy forgets that Tifa was 20 in Final Fantasy VII, not 16. Well, I'm talking about the flashback scenes. When they were at the village, I think she was like 16 in those flashback scenes. Bonus for the 2. Tifa was 20 in Final Fantasy VII. She did own a bar. Correct. I'm talking about the town, was it Nibelheim? Yes, thank you, Nibelheim, Shady Duck. I think it was a flashback scene that people are upset about how they added to her shirt and made her skirt longer. Not the character in like the main game, but in the flashback scenes. People need to remember that's where the issue that a lot of people had was. And it is an interesting conversation. All right, it's an interesting, because I can definitely see both sides to the argument, but I, in this instance, fall on the side of it's a digital recreation of a retro game. Try to remain faithful to the digital recreation of the retro game. Odin Darkle says censorship is when you take away steak from adults because babies can't eat them. Exactly. It's like, that's the thing. The games, the whole point of the ESRB being established was to get rid of unnecessary censorship in gaming. If you can't deal with what a game has to offer, don't buy that game. It's really that simple.